Okay, we're live. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jason Downs. I will be emceeing today's session. This is the first training provider forum that is being done live stream to you, and it's been hosted by the Department of Innovation and Skills. We're going to try and make this slightly interactive, and there'll be some instructions shortly on how you can participate. And it's also my understanding that this is being recorded and will be available to be watched later on if you have to move on to other things. So I'd like to acknowledge that today we're speaking to you from the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and we acknowledge the Kaurna as the traditional custodians of this land, and we acknowledge their living culture and unique role in the life of this region. Very shortly, you're going to hear from the Minister. We will then, if time permits, have the opportunity for you to ask some questions via the chat line. Some instructions are about to come up on the screen, which will enable you to participate. So if we can move to that screen and you can see the information there, please write this down somewhere so that you can see it. That's the address, www.slido, and the event code is there for you to have a look at. If you have a question for the Minister and time allows, we will get to those. If not, and we'll ensure that information is provided in another format later on. We are interested in where your priorities are right now, and feel in times like this that you may benefit from hearing what your peers are experiencing as well. So we would encourage you to join in and participate how you can. Between our presenters, we'll run a couple of online polls, and your information will be very valuable in terms of informing the future direction, not only how these events are run, but how things are considered as a whole. The more responses that we get, the greater insights that we have, and the greater the changes that can be influenced. So right now, I would like to again thank you all for being here virtually today, and acknowledge that we have with us our first speaker, the Honourable David Personey, MP, Minister for Innovation and Skills. Minister.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, and thank you for your acknowledgement to country. And before I start, I also want to thank the team at DIS, Madeline Richardson and her team, for getting us to where we are. We're in a very good place here in South Australia when it comes to skills training compared to where we were when I was first made the Minister just over 2 years ago. A lot's happened, and it's because of the work that the industry has done, training organisations have done, industry have done, and the work that Madeline and her team have done. So we're in a very good place, I think, and there's still a lot more to do, but we're very, very pleased with what we've achieved so far. Because we know, of course, that a skilled workforce is critical to South Australia's economic recovery post-COVID. And over the past 2 years, the Marshall Government, together with training providers and industry, has rebuilt the training system here in South Australia. And of course, we're now starting to see dividends on that work that we've done. What you're seeing on the screen now is the December quarter 2019 of the number of commencements of apprentices and trainees here in South Australia. And these are all paid traineeships, training contracts. So you can see South Australia, a 9.3% increase, and every other state saw double-digit declines in their commencements. There's been no change in the way that they're delivering their training, the way they're offering their training to employers, and you can see that they're still on that downward trajectory that we inherited when we came to office. On top of that, if you look at the year in total, we had a 13.8% increase in the number of commencements in South Australia against a national decline of 3.6%. So good work from all of those that have been involved in getting us to this stage. And some of the standout figures: mature aged apprenticeships up by 114%. And this is important because we know that people that have that developed skills or learnt skills 20 or 30 years ago, very relevant for the economy at that time. Economy's changed significantly, and there are opportunities now that employers are recognising in having those those staff that are coming from other industries reskilling. They're recognising that the important investment they can make for their businesses. So we're very pleased with that increase. Females, a 22% increase in apprentices and trainees, 6.3% in Aboriginal apprentices and trainees. And for existing workers, and this is important, 90.8% increase in the training contracts for existing workers. And these have been very successful because, of course, businesses are changing as the economy is changing. And it's important that your existing staff continue to upskill so they can keep up with the changes that are happening. And one of the most exciting areas is the 407% increase in commencements for higher level qualifications at diploma or advanced diploma level. So these are what we call higher apprenticeships that are being done through a contractor training, a paid training system. And it's a big number for percentage-wise, but we did start from a standing start. So the numbers are only in the hundreds in that space, but it is, we're very pleased that new industries that haven't taken on trainees or apprentices before are moving into this space quite rapidly, and we'll see a lot more of that happening and many more opportunities happening in that space. And of course, under the Skilling South Australia Fund Agreement with the Commonwealth, we met our first year benchmark and got full funding from the federal government for meeting those conditions. Our second year, again, we met all of the benchmarks of the national partnership, and we got full funding. So 2 years in a row, we have delivered for the federal government as well. And of course, despite the COVID impacts, the department has reported that we're actually signing up more apprentices to the end of June this year than we were doing for the same period last year. And if we look at 2 years previous, back in June 2017, where 551 apprentices or more apprentices signed up in this June period compared to that June period in 2017. So again, the impacts of the changes that were made in the training space is paying off. So the thing that I'm also very interested about is now we have this enormous interest from a Prime Minister in skills training, apprenticeships and traineeships. I was in business for 22 years training apprentices. Didn't hear much from government about apprentices and training, certainly not from the Prime Minister. 15 years in politics, it's the first time that I've actually seen skills training lifted to this level. So it's something we all should take advantage of. We're all very passionate about training and skills. Now it's up at that level, where premiers are talking about it, the Prime Minister's talking about it, and I know with the negotiations that were happening with the job trainer package that was announced yesterday, that the Prime Minister was very much involved in the outcome of that announcement. And of course, when COVID hit, we were very concerned about the work that we had been doing with the non-government training sector, the RTOs that operate either as private organisations or as community or industry-based organisations. We were concerned about a drop-off in apprenticeships and traineeships, and of course, because it's a model that's the funding model is a model that's paid for fee for service. We were very concerned because of a increase in suspensions or terminations that might happen in apprenticeships and traineeships. We didn't want those training organisations to go backwards, to have to lose staff that they had trained and built up over the years. So we released a $16 million package to enable those businesses to continue as though nothing had changed. So the funding remained the same based on their historical funding level. And 98% of businesses took up that option. And there was also a $4 million package that enabled businesses to change their business model. Those training providers changed their business model for the fact that the more would need to be done online, and classroom training would need to change because of COVID. So we took swift action, and we've certainly had very good feedback about the impact that's had for the non-government sector. And we've put a number of support items in place. Our Skilling South Australia workforce projects, our group training boost, which has actually reduced the cost of taking on an apprentice through a group training organisation by about $200 a week for a 6-month period. Our Equip for Work process, our Equip for Growth progress, which is an additional set of funding, if you like, to help offset the costs for businesses that are taking on an apprentice if that business has 25 employees or less. And of course our building capability projects. Our vet marketing, our vet market package to keep those RTOs in business, and of course our COVID Clean Toolkit in partnership with the government. And again, something that I want to congratulate this team for rolling that out so quickly. I was on the COAG, and it was discussed one day. It was rolled out before the week's end. It was an amazing outcome, and I suppose it's one of the lessons learnt there is that things can be done quickly if they need to be, and hopefully we can move quickly in the reforms that we're continuing to roll out in the skills training area. So, so the Marshall government promotes access to choice. I mean, we know that we've got a thin market here in South Australia, and we want to see more people playing in the skills space. It's important for a healthy skills training environment for that to happen. And we're very pleased that we've seen about a 20% growth in the size of the non-government sector over the last 12 months or so. And that's where predominantly our growth in the apprentices and trainees has come from the non-government sector. The demand for skilling is increasing as industries and technologies change more rapidly than at any other time in history. And this is significant. It also means that businesses or industries that were established on the back of people with bachelor degrees, people with PhDs who knew everything about what they were doing, those businesses are at such a stage now, they're bigger, those industries are larger, and there's lots of opportunities to slice off skill sets and have those brought into the workforce through vocational education. So we're working very diligently on making sure that we can deliver those for the industry. The technology industry is very, very keen to roll out vocational education pathways because they argue, and we agree with them, that it's important that what their students are learning, they're able to implement while it's still current. And the changes that we're doing federally with Senator Cash at ASQA in making them much more responsive to change, much quicker to respond to demands for change and be much more relevant to industry will help deliver in those new areas and update some of those more traditional areas where things have changed. And now the Training and Skills Development Amendment Bill that I introduced in the Parliament just a couple of weeks ago. We'll be debating that next week in the Parliament, and that will see strengthening or enable us to strengthen our reforms and by establishing a new skills commissioner, and that will be a statutory body, modernising the legislation that underpins the system, reducing red tape around employer registration, introducing a poaching clause. In other words, ensuring that those businesses that have invested early in an apprentice's time are compensated if a big business or a mining company, for example, come in and offer their third-year apprentice a bigger salary to move. And we've seen firsthand through our Skilling South Australia success how effective and well-informed, flexible and responsive training system is in meeting industry and employer needs. New vocational pathways will provide skills for South Australians finishing school. We had a 23.7% increase in school-based apprenticeships last year. And of course they will connect to new opportunities. They move on to full-time apprenticeships when they've finished school. And it's critical that we continue to promote the career pathways through apprenticeships and traineeships to both established and new industry skill sets. And in addition to the 1 Million Skilled Careers campaign, there is still more work to do to increase the awareness of opportunities of vocational education delivers here in South Australia. And more employers tell me that accessing accredited courses and skill sets, including micro-credentials, for their existing workforce will help their businesses to grow and adjust to the new challenges and opportunities. So I say, yes, a university degree gives you a single ticket, that is to education. A vocational education pathway gives you 2 tickets, a ticket to education and a job. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Minister. Okay, so we've heard from the Minister and he's given a very detailed summary of where things are at and where things are headed. Minister's going to stick around for a short while before he has to head off to another appointment. Thank you everyone for sticking in. We have shortly another presentation, but before we move to that, I'm just going to move to the next slide if we could, and we're going to do a very short live poll here. So there's some information going to come up on your screen in terms of a question that we would like for you to respond to. So here is how you join at slido.com. There is the hashtag TPU update 1. The question that we're asking you, and you'll see it change as you enter your information, is how is your organisation currently delivering training and assessment? Is it being done online only? Is it being done face-to-face only? Or is it being done blended, online and face-to-face? And we have a 4th option, which is other. So for those of you that have the ability, if you wouldn't mind providing your information, this is all valuable data that helps to inform the department and how things are currently being done. My understanding is that there's approximately 200 people that have registered for this event. So there is technically a lot of you out there right now that are viewing this. Obviously, if you're viewing this as a recorded session, you can fast forward on this bit because we're no longer polling. So you can see right now that some of the information coming in, it's roughly a 50-50 split between face-to-face and other, and 2% at online. We will leave this survey open until the next survey in around about 10 minutes. But while you're grappling with the technology and responding to that question, I'm going to invite up our next speaker and introduce to you Madeline Richardson, who is the Executive Director for the Skills and Workforce Capability Division within the Department of Innovation and Skills. So Madeline, welcome. Over to you.
Hi everybody, thank you very much Jason, and lovely to connect with everybody online as well. Also like to acknowledge that we're meeting today on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people, and to also thank the Minister for his introduction. We're joined in the room also by Peter and Leanne, who will join us up here in a little bit, so thank you for participating today and for your time as well. So I think I have a short little time with you just to touch on a few things. Thought to reflect a little bit on where we are, to highlight a couple of the key areas that we're focused on, and to also share what you've told us is most important for you right now, where you see both the challenges and the opportunities. So where are we? I recently participated in some masterclasses put on by the Australian and New Zealand School of Government. And I'm going to borrow a little bit from some of the things that they talked about that resonated with me, and I think, you know, connecting with you as leaders in your organisations as well, I hope will resonate with you too. So due credit to Anne Zog and the team. So one of the things we talked about in those masterclasses was, how is COVID different? How is it different to other crises that we may have been a part of or experienced ourselves? So they talked about two factors there. One, the prolonged nature of COVID. So it's not a single issue or a single point of time. This is something that has prolonged over many months so far, and potentially years as well. They talked about it being different in terms of what began as a public health crisis has now also moved into other areas of challenges for us as a community, and from an economic perspective as well. They talked about, what does it tell us about our leadership, what's required? One of the things that stood out to me was about needing an integrated approach. And the phrase that sticks in my head is, there's no use exchanging business cards on game day. It's too late, you've missed the opportunity, you've missed the need. They also talked about that thing that we often experience, which is the difference between paper readiness or preparedness and the readiness in reality. So that difference and the importance of those scenario planning, the business continuity, all of the things that we do, but how we need to really test and stretch what's required when we're facing these new challenges. From a leadership perspective, there was also a key theme around improvisation and how important that is for us as leaders, an important leadership task, and how we can lead that in our organisations and think about that quick coordination and where we need to be entrepreneurs in our own business as well. One of the other things from a leadership perspective was, there is no turning back. There is very little or no return to some of the old settings that we may have been used to. The evidence is very clear now of what we can work, how we can work differently and where we can work differently. Again, one of the key phrases that stuck with me through those masterclasses was, sometimes when we're moving really quickly, it shows us what's possible, but sometimes the empire strikes back. So we have to work really hard to make sure where we've moved the status quo, it stays that way. And the last theme I'll just talk about in reflecting on that a little bit was also where crisis can be a teacher. So it's really important that we don't trade off some of that longer term thinking when we're drawn into the immediate. And I know we all probably live and breathe that every day. Crisis can be a teacher in how we think about our systems and our approach as well. And also that whilst reforms that can take place are really positive, we also need to make sure that our response is grounded in learning, grounded in inquiry, and the sense making that comes when we have a little bit of time to reflect as well. So I also thought I'll just move on to a couple of the key areas that we're focused on and what we're seeing in the sector. I think, as the Minister touched on, I think it is fair to say there is a strong degree of resilience that has been demonstrated through the sector. And I know everybody who's participating, whether you're at work or at home, has played a big role in demonstrating that resilience. We're seeing that through, as the Minister touched on, the amount of activity and some new training account creation. The people have managed to keep their doors open and diversify their delivery. And as the Minister also highlighted, we're hopeful that the vet continuity package has also enabled you to keep delivering your business in new ways as well. We've seen that many providers have looked to develop their online capacity through investing in new hardware, engaging in new institutional design and approaches and expertise, upskilling their staff and expanding online delivery as well. Some providers have also reported during this time greater levels of student engagement and lower levels of attrition by using online delivery compared to face-to-face, which is a positive and again gives us a little bit of a lesson as to what we take from this. Some providers have also looked to access larger training facilities to make sure they can maintain social distancing requirements. I'd put that in the innovation camp. I'd say that is about how we are thinking differently to keep delivering to our students and our stakeholders. From an apprenticeship point of view, we know that there are challenges out there. In particular, we are seeing impacts in key industries around travel and tourism and hospitality, I think we would all recognise at the moment that South Australia is in a better position than some of our colleagues and peers across the country, particularly in Victoria at the moment. We're also very aware of the key impacts on those industries and where we'll need to work together to keep navigating that. Job Trainer, as the Prime Minister announced, is a really significant opportunity for everybody, including South Australia. 340,000 training places nationwide, strong focus on supporting school leavers, strong focus on job seekers. We will be communicating to you as soon as we can about what that looks like for South Australia. And as we have been doing consistently, it involves partnership to lead to success as well. Thinking about our focus, where we focus next, 3 major areas of focus at the moment. One is around stabilisation. We also need to think about rebuild and recover, and how we also keep an eye to those future state needs as well. Am I getting close? I'm done. So one, can I stretch the friendship?
It's your show.
Okay. One more minute, perhaps. Just to wrap up, what I didn't get to talk about perhaps was the themes that you've highlighted most, which I really, really want to do. So some of the things that you've told us is most important. I think there are compliance challenges out there, particularly from a state-by-state perspective. You've talked about the challenges also associated with work placements and practical assessments and the difficulty in that. These are issues we absolutely acknowledge and are really conscious of that as well. So I'd like us to keep talking about that, demonstrating and that pivoting from face-to-face to online delivery and the capacity to do so. Building capability is a platform to support you to do that. But again, I'd really open that up to ideas and further discussion about what else you're looking for to further enable that. Some key issues around what the status of the Vet for Schools policy at the moment. Chris, who's in the room today with us, participated in an RTO forum focused on Vet for Schools during the week. So if you haven't participated in that, there's an opportunity to gain some information there. And a key thing coming from you guys is about funding as well. So seeking advice on funding, seeking advice on that balance between some of the short-term supports and the longer term as well. Chris will touch a little bit more on the subsidised training list a little bit later. I'd encourage you to really visit skills.sa.gov.au. There is a menu there of opportunities and options to support you and your business. Always come and have a talk to us. The door is always open for that conversation to understand more about your business, understand how you're going, and where we can work together. Thank you.
Thank you, Madeline. So in the essence of time, we'll just quickly move to the next slide, which is the next poll question, where we're asking you again to participate. And the question that we're asking you is, what platforms are you using to engage with your students and colleagues right now? So we're going to, while you're putting that together, we'll have a word cloud appear in front of our eyes. Just while you're providing your comments there, I might ask our next guest, Peter, if you wouldn't mind just coming up onto the chair, and we'll see what happens in terms of questions, responses to questions. So here we go. Blackboard Collaborate, Moodle, Microsoft Teams, Zoom. Thank you very much. We're getting some good comments there. Look, in the essence of time, please put your information on there. I'm going to move across here and sit on a very comfortable chair and welcome Peter Newland to the show. Peter, as many of you'll know, is from Peer. Peter, thanks for joining us today. Would you like to introduce the first video?
Sure. So Peer was able to access some funding through the Building Capability Fund, and we embarked on a project to develop some masterclass videos. So they have been very successful. The video summarises the project, so I'm happy to go straight to the video.
Thanks, Peter. So we're going to go straight now to the video.
Peer's always looking for innovation in how we provide information, content to our apprentices. The Masterclass project was looking at providing our apprentices with concise, informative videos. We trialled a number of ways to develop content to provide to the apprentices. The first was that we outsourced to a animator. We also outsourced to a videographer to take videos of people. In the end, we realised that most of the content could be developed at Peer.
So this is one of our blended learning rooms. Due to the fact that they are doing a lot of blended work or online work, it gives the opportunity to look at those masterclasses. So the recorded learning material, which we call the masterclass, is able to be played by the students over and over again.
Employers watching those masterclass videos will realise that we're actually doing something different. We're providing content in a way that's really engaging and meaningful to apprentices, and we're hopeful that the masterclass video series will enhance and get on board employers to be more engaged in the apprentices' learning journey.
There's one instance where we have a trainer that's actually stripping a cable. The students need to watch this video over and over again to actually get the technique correct. Now, before this, the trainer really needed to demonstrate this on multiple occasions and over again. But now, through the aid of this masterclass video, he can demonstrate that to the person. That student can go back and watch that video as many times as they like to get that technique correct.
I think going forward it's a very important part of training of apprentices in particular and young people, engaging with them, giving them content in the way that they want to hear it, they want to see it.
Okay, thank you. Great video, Peter. Very much appreciate the effort there. Before I ask you the first question, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank the Minister for joining us today. As I said earlier, he's a very busy man. He has other appointments to undertake, so he's now leaving us. Peter, over to you. I'm just interested in understanding how the project has supported Peer to adapt delivery and respond to the challenges of the COVID-19 restrictions.
So the project really helped Peer having content available in a way that was meaningful and also available to our students as they embarked on remote training. So having blended learning resources is one thing. Having those masterclass videos really underpinned a lot of the theoretical knowledge, practical application and principles that the apprentices need to know. So we really focused on content that the trainers knew that the apprentices had challenges understanding, and they were the masterclass videos that we focus on. Having those available, as was mentioned, to be able to watch over and over again, we found really added some learning capability to Peer and to our students who were accessing training via remote learning.
That's great. Very impressive. Thank you. So can you share with the audience any experiences about delivering training and assessment over the past few months and preparing, I guess, for the next generation of training?
Sure. So, look, Peer were fortunate, and over the last 3 years, we've developed blended learning resources. We've always been able to deliver remotely, but there wasn't demand. Apprentices and employers expect to go to trade school to learn. With the pandemic, we were able to pivot to remote training in a week and utilise our blended learning capability. But once you implement something, you start finding out where you can do things better. So we've reflected on that. We've surveyed our trainers and our students to find out, what worked well, what could we improve on. And I think one of the things that we learnt, Jason, was that when you've got students in the class that you can support their learning journey, that's one thing. But when students are learning remotely, if you don't have good automation around your systems and processes and the whole learning journey, then it can be more difficult for the student to remain engaged. So one of the things that we are embarking on is better automating our processes around learning and having the learning journey like you follow the bouncing ball. So there doesn't need to be as much manual intervention as there is in a classroom environment.
So can I just get an understanding? The platforms that you're now using, how many people would you be delivering that to?
So we have over 250 Bettons School students, and
Wow.
As we know, before the term break, everyone was going to remote training. So we switched all of our students to remote training that week. We also were able to offer over 400 electrical apprentices remote training. Now, not everyone was keen to participate, particularly apprentices. We had a really good engagement with the school students. We had over 80% attendance. A lot of apprentices wanted to come into peer. They like learning face-to-face. They're tactile type people. Employers were also nervous about sending apprentices, not sending them into trade school rather, and having them work, could be in their office or at home. Would they keep studying or whatever their concerns might be? So we've overcome a lot of those initial concerns and barriers, and we find now that 2/3 of the apprentices will come into trade schools and attend as normal. But we are seeing an increase now in students attending remotely on a day-by-day basis, and that gives them and their employer greater flexibility. If they've got a day where it's raining or there's not much work, they can continue to learn
That's amazing.
in the office.
Yeah, yep.
So I think we'll see more and more growth in the area going forward.
Fantastic. And I guess you're interacting with the students quite a bit to get some feedback from them on what can be done differently or better to support them as well.
So we've got one of the new initiatives that we've introduced as a remote training team. We've got a group of very energetic people at Peer that are looking at how can we continue to improve what we're doing. Feedback from apprentices is that we want to watch videos.
Yeah, right.
And so we're looking at the masterclass series that we building on that. But also we're looking at gamification and why are games so successful. And if you think about games, it's an incremental learning journey and people are rewarded along the way. So we're looking at how do we apply technologies in a gamified approach to engage and reward apprentices through their learning journey. So that's a project that we're working on right now.
Well, that's really great. Thank you. Look, we are right out of time. Peter, I wanted to thank you very much for coming in here today to be a part of this conversation, share with us your insights. Much appreciated.
You're welcome.
Would you like to, I guess, introduce the next video that you have, and then we'll move on from there?
Sure. So this is just a quick video, and it just summarises the remote training team, what we're looking at, and we're looking at a whole range of options, looking at how can we apply technology to the learning journey. And this has just been put together to showcase some of those technologies that we're looking at.
Thanks, Peter. Much appreciated. Thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Where is Peer's training going? Peer is using current technologies to transform its training delivery to engage our students. We will be using motivation and achievement goal theory overlaid with adult learning principles to revolutionise our training delivery. What does this look like? Let me take you on a journey.
That's amazing. Thank you, Peter, once again. I'm now going to introduce you to our next speaker. Welcome to the Chair, Leanne Haig, who is from the Australian Nursing and Midwifery Federation. So you're going to share with us some of your experiences over the last few months around adapting to training and delivery. And my first question to you is perhaps to share with us some of your insights around the challenges that you've experienced in responding to the needs that you're faced with.
Thanks, Jason. I think we have looked a lot at the challenges that we've experienced, but we've also considered that they've been a fantastic opportunity to learn and to improve on what we've done. But there's probably been 6 key areas where we've had challenges. One was around the delivery of practical skills. There was also stuff around systems and procedures, our online delivery, our student engagement, our resources, and then maintaining our industry support and connections. So just to look at those in a little bit more detail. The first one, ANMEC, like lots of RTOs, delivers qualifications that really are based very much on practical skills. And so that was a really big fear for us when all of this occurred, is how we would maintain the practical teaching delivery. And the decision was made by our management to close down our facility for a period of about 8 weeks. And so none of our students were able to come into the facility to do those practical skills. And this is where our educators just came to the fore. They had such fantastic, inventive ways of getting things done, and it was surprising what solutions they were able to come up with. And some of the skills had to wait, and we've now been absolutely smashing it out with all the practical skills now that we can have the students back. But we've still got our students back under a very strictly controlled environment. They're temperature tested on arrival. They are required to socially distance, of course, and they come in on short bursts to make sure that there's no temptation to sort of gather socially at any time. And we're also using a lot of online forums and virtual classrooms as well. As Peter referred to, I think the systems and the procedures and the way that we were doing things before really get tested in an environment like this. And I think we were very fortunate to find that many of our systems were able to withstand the pressure of COVID. So whilst they might have seemed like they were very anal pre-COVID, we suddenly discovered that they were worth having around once the challenges came up. And we could just sort of deal with those things quite quickly because we already knew how we wanted to deal with them. Our online education platform was well developed already, and I think that's a huge value for us. We had some students who were studying entirely online, so they just continued on as if nothing had even changed. And then the others who had blended experiences just saw that things got flipped where they did more online and obviously weren't able to do for some time some of that face-to-face experience. All of our students have managed to progress as planned, and I think that's a great credit to the educators and to the students and to the industry that they've been able to do that. We've used Microsoft Teams quite extensively. As I saw on the survey, lots of people did, and we've done lots of online tutorials and teaching sessions. All of our staff also exited the building and they all worked from home to their credit. Even our switchboard staff set up at home remote switchboards and just kept going.
Amazing.
So we were really pleased with how they were able to engage with all of that and the support that we got. We did find that some of the students were challenged in engaging in online, and one of the funniest stories was of a student who engaged in his first Microsoft Teams video classroom session from bed. And didn't quite know why that wasn't appropriate. so getting them to understand and to work out how to interact with some of that was part of our challenge, but I think that's worked quite well. I must say too that having the market continuity payments and the support from DIS with all of this has made quite a difference to how we're able to quickly respond. So that has made a huge difference to us. Student engagement was a bit of a challenge in some cases. Quite a few students, despite despite how much we communicated with them, thought they were going on holiday. So we had to spend a lot of time communicating and explaining that it wasn't a holiday. We were looking at a different way of dealing with things. And we also found we had to be much more flexible about, you know, things like maybe a student dereliction procedure that you might have in the past. We need to be much more understanding of the fact that students may have other challenges at home, maybe with partners losing jobs or family challenges, etc. So tracking those students down, but then providing them with additional support was really important. And I think those situations really showed us where the student outcomes could be really positive. So that was really good. Another challenge that we experienced was the Vet in Schools program, because as we all know, schools are their own little microcosm at the moment, and they seem to have very different rules from the outside. They look like they're operating differently than how the rest of the world is in the COVID situation. So we had 28 schools we had to negotiate with for over 100 students to work out how we could deliver for their school students and still maintain their expectations and satisfy their needs to get SACE points, etc. But also ensure that we were providing all of the right precautions around COVID. So that became quite a challenge, but I think we worked through that quite well. Investment in resources and facilities and people has had to increase, and I had a student who contacted me the other day saying, surely your costs have gone down because you wouldn't have been paying for electricity or air conditioning over the COVID period because the building was closed, and she really didn't understand how many other things we had to invest in order to make it succeed. Our staff were phenomenal. They just jumped in and did whatever was required, but we had to invest a lot more in people, a lot more in equipment, IT equipment in particular, but also in setting up things like we've set up a second skills laboratory for our nursing and caring students, because now that they're back in the building, they're really wanting to smash out all those practical things. And so we've set up an additional skills lab with beds and lifters and equipment and consumables to ensure that that is able to be achieved for the students. And once again, that those continuity payments have really helped us to fund all of that. So they're getting quite a smashing at the moment because we're wondering whether the Victorian bug's going to creep across the border, and if there's going to be a second wave, we want to get as much done now while we can.
Of course.
And the final area, which I think has been a big challenge, but also has probably shown us where we were well set up to cope with COVID, has been in our engagement with industry and stakeholders and the community. I think those relationships that we spent a lot of time building prior to COVID, without realising that we were going to need them really badly, have really come to the fore. We've had incredible support from aged care providers, from health providers, from stakeholders, from DIS, from regulators, from all sorts of places. We've had incredible support because we had good relationships to start with, and they've really paid off for us. A lot of providers we've heard have had a lot of difficulty finding clinical placements for students, and at this stage we've had not a student who hasn't been able to be placed because we've been able to call in those favours and take advantage of those relationships. And I think it's great credit to the entire team that those relationships exist, that have made it possible for us to succeed there. So I think they're the sort of the main things, but really the dedication of the staff and the relationships we had have been the biggest wins for us, and have helped us to overcome a lot of the challenges.
Very interesting insights. Thank you very much. Before the session, we were talking about this next question.
Yes.
And we were trying to figure out a term here. So the question is, what does your organisation see as the new normal or the better way going forward for training and for the industry's employers who you work with? And how are you preparing for this?
Sure.
What do you see as
I think some of the things
to
that Madeline talked about in her presentation resonated with me, because I think we have had to make that really strong leap in our heads to recognising that we're not going to return to what it was like before.
No.
That's never going to happen.
And that's not such a bad thing
No,
either, is it?
and I think that's been the great learning for us, is
Yep.
we've discovered that we are creative and innovative in finding ways of actually improving things
Yep.
that maybe we wouldn't have done as quickly or as well if we hadn't been pushed
course.
by the current circumstances. So recognising that what we were doing has changed forever is really important.
Yep.
I think continuing to invest in our online resources is really important, and we've appointed an instructional designer. So whereas before we would have kind of plodded along, we've recognised how important it is to invest in that. We're not taking anything for granted anymore, so clinical placements, etc., they're not just necessarily going to happen when we want them to. We know we have to work hard to achieve them. We've recognised how valuable our relationships are, as I've already said, and there's been a really big shift, as in many organisations, to recognising that working from home can be a really productive experience.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think that's been good. And I think we've recognised too that some, and maybe not all, but students are learning to be more resilient, more self-directed in the way that they learn, and more agile in responding to change. And I'd like to hope that that will actually produce a much more robust type of learner for the future. And if we can contribute to that, and still meet their expectations, and that's a pretty good thing. So,
That's fabulous.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Look, time again is
Yes,
crept away.
I'm sure it is.
That's really valuable information. So thanks for sharing that with everyone.
Thank you.
I'm sure there's been some great points there for others to think about. What I'm going to do now, stay with us here, is introduce you now to our next speaker. Our next speaker is the Director for Skills Planning and Purchasing within the Department of Innovation and Skills. And over to you, Chris Zielinski, just to share with us some of your information.
Thanks, Jason. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for staying with us and joining us today. My job as the last speaker, I'm going to give a quick overview of some of the changes we've made recently to the subsidised training list. I also thought I would talk briefly around some of the opportunities from our vet workforce perspective, and time permitting, a bit of an update on the infection control training that was released recently the Minister referred to. So many of you would know that subsidised training list 6 was announced in May 29 and came into effect from 1 July. The STL very much underpinned by stability and sustainability, so it builds on the progressive changes that have been in play for a couple of years, looks at increasing the number of courses. So again, through this STL, we've increased courses. I think there's additional 30 courses that have been added to the subsidised training list, bringing the total to about 780. There are still a large number of courses available through the subsidised traineeship and apprenticeship list, so that's the majority, about 590. There are a mixture of courses across the subsidised training in the TPL, the training priorities list, and the subsidised traineeship and apprenticeship list, about 100, and then there are about 90 courses on the training priorities list. So there's flexibility across the list of courses based on the conditions that apply to the training. Really encourage you or your organisation to look at the STL. We often hear that not everyone is aware of what courses are available and or funded, so I encourage you to visit our website, the Skills website, to see the list and work through the opportunities available to you. Some of the key changes that we introduced through STL 6.0, there are 4 of them. I'll go through them quickly. So we've really tried to streamline the process around some of our submission activities. So there are no longer any training priorities list or stall quotas. We have opted to replace that with a managed course approach, which is an allocation to training providers. This removes or tries to reduce red tape and also the costs associated with putting in those submissions. Obviously, if those places become a barrier to training, we're open to the conversation to adjust those as needed, and it's as simple as an email to the department, and then we can adjust from there. We've also introduced skill sets. So this is the first time in a long time that skill sets are available through the subsidised training list. It is a toe in the water approach, which we'll add to over time. So we've introduced a handful of courses or skill sets in this instance. They are focused on individuals with an existing qualification or with work experience to support upskilling and reskilling of workers. We've also provided an opportunity for training providers who are finding it challenging in the current environment to get training contracts, which is some of the conditions we apply through the stall in particular. And as a result of COVID, there's an opportunity for providers to reach out to the department and provide supporting evidence from industry that there's the necessary to change some of the conditions currently. So we will look at making the courses available outside of training contract arrangements. It is worth noting that the opportunity to add a course to the STL still remains in place. So that's an additional, that's a separate mechanism, but we're also open to feedback around what courses industry are requiring. And the last change that's worth noting is the training priorities list projects. So many of you who received or currently have a contract with the department and received a notification about the subsidised training list would have seen notification around training priority list projects. There has been a delay in the guidelines, but they will be available later this month. It's really a supporting mechanism complementing the existing initiatives that are available through the department with a strong focus on being able to scale up those initiatives to support future purchasing arrangements. Just, I'll go on to note that through the STL, there's also a number of opportunities for the vet workforce to upskill. There are a range of diploma qualifications that are now available through the subsidised training list and also skill sets. The focus there is to provide the opportunity for the vet workforce to upskill. Really encourage those listening today to look at those opportunities available and take up those. DIS is really committed to ensuring the capacity and capability of the vet sector grows and strengthens as we go forward. And just finally, I'll give a quick update on COVID clean training. So Minister mentioned before at the start that COVID clean training was announced as joint initiative with the Commonwealth Government. Have to say we have got some really good local providers who responded very quickly to the ask. They are now supporting statewide delivery of those units and enabling businesses to reopen and support economic recovery as we go through the pandemic. There are around 5,500 places that are available, particularly to customer-facing employees and business owners and their supervisors. I encourage you to look at our website, skills website again. Information will be provided after today's session to see the opportunities available through COVID Clean. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Well done. Okay, we have a very short period of time left, so I'm going to wrap things up now. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. The information that I have at hand is that we've had 328 people logging in to witness today's session. So clearly there is an interest for the information provided. I'd like to thank our presenters, the Minister David Pisoni, Madeline Richardson, Peter Norland and Leanne Haig and Chris Zielinski for your time today, providing the information. Thank you to everyone who has provided input into the polls. That information is valuable and will be used to guide some future decisions. Later on today, you will receive an email link asking you to provide us with your feedback on today's session. It's a short survey. It won't take you very long at all. If you could participate in that, we'd really appreciate your feedback. If you have any other questions, apologies for not having time to respond to all your questions today. There will be a follow-up email early in the week, which will provide some responses to questions that haven't been answered from those speakers today, as well as links to the website and also the recording of this session today. A save the date reminder that the next update will be on Friday the 4th of September, and there'll be more information to come on that. And with that said and done, that's it for today. Thank you everybody for joining us and participating. Have a lovely weekend and all the best with your next couple of weeks. Thank you.